It's such a pleasure for me to welcome you to this afternoon's VNR Lab on building bridges, engaging stakeholders to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And on behalf of UNDESA, I really extend my warm gratitude to the major groups and other stakeholders coordination mechanism for your fantastic collaboration in making today's session possible. This is the 7th year that DESA is coordinating the series of VNR Labs, which really are intended as an informal platform where participants, member states, stakeholders, UN system can come together, share their reflections on the VNR process. And we are today really happy to have with us representatives from Spain and Costa Rica and also Brazil. From the stakeholder side, as you all are representing countries that are presenting their voluntary national reports this year at the HLPF. In fact, Spain is doing so at 3 p.m., so we really have no time to lose with this session. And we hope that your efforts that you're going to be sharing with all of us to engage stakeholders in the VNR process will really serve as an inspiration to all of us here in the room. Colleagues, as we all know, promoting meaningful, and I stress meaningful, engagement of stakeholders is not always easy. It does require commitment, dedicated planning, and resources. It involves building trust, developing clear, tailored communication, setting up mechanisms for receiving feedback, and maintaining a flexibility to change and to tailor approaches if needed. It also demands a common understanding that implementing the SDGs is not possible unless there's profound structural changes across all sectors of society. It also necessitates efforts to review participation quality and the creation of an enabling environment for collaboration. Every year after the HLPF is over, UNDESA prepares and publishes a VNR synthesis report, which features also a chapter on good practices on stakeholder engagement by that year's VNR countries. Additionally, we in DESA also conduct capacity building initiatives to support countries and facilitate peer learning in the preparatory VNR process, emphasizing ways to strengthen stakeholder participation. Our yearly review of the VNRs shows that the methods and trends are becoming increasingly innovative and effective. And today's meeting, we really look forward to hearing what you have been doing as countries to engage stakeholders. These practices help to advance the VNR process and really give us a sense of optimism about the global commitment to the 2030 Agenda and the VNRs. So we're really looking forward to an honest conversation today. And hope that you can address elements that facilitate the participatory process and some of the main challenges you have encountered, and also that you can make recommendations on how multi-stakeholder governance mechanism and consultations at the national level could be strengthened. The VNR process is really a tool for all of us to generate opportunities for exchange between national governments, development partners and stakeholders, and I really encourage all of you to see how we can keep up the momentum and forge partnerships that can accelerate SDG implementation. So now let us hear from the practitioners in the room. I wish you all a successful and productive VNR Lab. Thank you, Nayara. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also from the side of the major groups and other stakeholders, we are extremely grateful for this collaboration with DESA and with the ongoing support that we receive throughout the year to enable different stakeholder voices to be heard at the VNRs. I'm Ollie Henman, I'm one of the two co-chairs, and I was previously also, I have been already a number of years helping to organize our VNR task group. And as many of you will know in this room, stakeholder engagement really is a year-round process. We start that process with many of the colleagues that you hear from in the room with the national dialogues, such a strong engagement. I think this year in particular, we have some very clear examples like Brazil, like Kenya, some very strong countries, Spain, of course, Costa Rica that we'll be hearing. And the detail of the engagement really is a year-round process. When it comes to here at the HLPF, we're delighted that we work closely with DESA to be able to bring voices from those countries and from civil society to also speak and to raise questions and statements during the main proceedings. And of course, we look forward to hearing about follow-up, and particularly this time as we're hearing many countries coming to the second or third time in their VNRs, how does that then follow up at the national level? How are the recommendations from VNRs brought into national development plans? So we're very excited and very pleased to be here as always, and look forward to a rich dialogue.
Thank you so very much, Ollie. So colleagues, let me introduce myself. I'm Nayara Costa. I also work at DESA, the Division for Sustainable Development Goals in London's team. And we are pleased to have you here with us today for this VNR Lab. And as you can see, it's a very cozy space. Also, we have space for conversation, for discussion, for reflections that sometimes when we only have like 2 minutes or we can't speak at all, this is more challenging. So we hope you can take this space to reflect a little bit, because I know you have all been engaged in the VNR process. As Lotte and Oli mentioned, we are really grateful to have Spain and Costa Rica with us, especially considering that Spain is presenting their VNR this afternoon, and so Cristina may need to leave us before the end of this session. But what we have invited the member states to share is really take this time to reflect on your journey and on the stakeholder engagement perspective. How did you do it? How did you engage your stakeholders? What were the lessons that you learned? And what are also the good practices, especially, that you developed in your countries that you think could be also insights or ideas that other countries could consider? And if there are things that you will be continue working, move after your presentation, because as Ollie was saying, VNRs is a year-long process, but it's also a process that should continue after you present at the CR4 during those days. So let me start by inviting Mrs. Cristina Gonzalez Sebas. She's Deputy Director General for the 2030 Agenda for Spain. So Cristina, please over to you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and thank you very much for inviting Spain. It's a pleasure for me to be here to share with you at this VNR Lab the good practices that we have carried out concerning stakeholders' engagement this year for the preparation of our VNR, and this is the third time we present this review. In our case, one of the main issues about preparing the VNR was to ensure a participatory approach of the set of actors who have different interests and roles on the 3 dimensions on sustainability. In particular, in Spain, we have been able to develop a process in which all public institutions have been involved, such as regions and local entities, as well as civil society as a whole. To do this, we have used different bodies where the ministries, the regions, and local authorities are represented. In fact, we have collected the information from all these actors, and we have shared with them the different papers we were elaborating for our VNR from the Ministry of Social Rights, Consumer Affairs, and 2030 Agenda. I would also like to highlight the role of the Sustainable Development Council, a body in which many civil society institutions like companies, universities, and other social entities participate, which has made an independent opinion on the achievements and challenges on the 2030 Agenda in Spain. In addition to this opinion from the Sustainable Development Council, our VNR is accompanied by other reports as annex, prepared by other important institutions in Spain, such as the Ombudsman and the National Institution of Public Administration. One of the main learnings has been the importance of the VNR to reinforce society's commitment to the 2030 Agenda and to deliver its message and goals in a context that we believe it is more necessary than ever. Moreover, in the case of Spain, the VNR has allowed us to put the first step to review our sustainable development strategy and place the SDGs at the center of the public policies. The involvement of all these type of actors also led to promote policy coherence for sustainable development and to analyze the different synergies and trade-offs between the public policy and the interests from the stakeholders, which is key to define and make political decisions. However, several challenges remain. For instance, increasing the knowledge about the VNR is one of the most important issues nowadays, as well as boosting the capacity and training to do this review. In Spain, we are concerned about promoting local authorities to do this type of exercise, as we consider that the 2030 Agenda is only possible if we localize the SDGs. So we cannot understand making a VNR without taking into account the stakeholders, as the 2030 Agenda is a common framework and we need to go all together to achieve its goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cristina. They are clapping on the other side, so it's our turn now. So let me turn now to Costa Rica and into Latin America. So Mr. Jose Pablo Céspedes Rodriguez, he's coordinator of the SDG Technical Secretariat. We are very eager to hear your experience in Costa Rica.
Thank you. Dear representative, organizations, friends. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation. For us, this kind of space is very important to show the work, our practice and implementation of the 2030 Agenda. For us, the stakeholders and sector participation is an important element in our 2030 Agenda implementation. From the experience of Costa Rica, we have to understand the sectorial and stakeholders participation is a process into the VNR and elaboration, where we have to go back to 2017, where our country signed of the National Pact by the three powers of the Republic, unions, private sectors, academia, NGOs. So the sign of this National Pact is an important element to understand the process to elaborate this VNR. This pact not only represents Costa Rica as the first country in the world to have this kind of multi-sectorial commitment, also represents the participation into the SDG national framework through the SDG commitment. So these different actors and stakeholders participate into the framework through the commitment. So this committee also has some things, has the annual plan working where the VNR process and the VNR elaboration is a central element for the last year, because we can ensure the participation is not easy always, because, well, we know different stakeholders has ups and downs in the motivation for the VNR process, and not only for the VNR process, also for all the implementation of the agenda. So also we have to understand the role of the government into the VNR process and how the different stakeholders can participate. considering this kind of crisis, this kind of situations, the government and the government role have to keep pushing and keep moving forward to understand the VNR process is important also for the different stakeholders. So from the National SDG Secretary, we promote and relaunch our national commitment in the last year in the board of the Action Decade to also have in mind the VNR formulation. So it's not only understand the situation of the different stakeholders, it's also keep pushing and involve the different stakeholders into the 2030 agenda, not only into VNR process. However, in the other stages has defined other things. For example, the last year also we defined our national targets. So we also have the participation of the different actors and different stakeholders. So for us, and in conclusion, we can mention the SDG National Framework had a keystone where in the case of Costa Rica, we have a participation of the many sectors and many stakeholders. And well, as government, we have to change the challenge to keep the different states alive and ensure the real participation, because we have to keep pushing and keep motivating the different stakeholders and well, guarantees the active and real participation of the other sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paz. I wonder, we are going to have a conversation and maybe, if I may kickstart, it's interesting to hear from both countries this idea that you need to also explain what is the VNR and why is it important for stakeholders. In the case of Spain, this idea of going down to the local governments and engage them. I was just wondering if you could share one activity or one way that you created this interest from stakeholders. How were the tools that you used, or for how did you engage the local governments in the process? Maybe you could share a little bit more, and then I think we should open for colleagues to contribute as well. That is maybe Sina.
Okay, in our case, we have a Spanish Federation of Local Authorities, which has a local framework from entities to 2030 agenda. We have, I think, 700 local authorities in this framework. So we have tried to do this review with the participation of this federation. So we have explained to the local authorities what is the VNR, what are the main learnings and challenges, and how they can use the VNR process to reinforce society's commitment to the 2030 agenda, because I think this is one of the main objectives of local authorities, to reinforce the society's commitment to these goals and to promote public policies to achieve its goals. So I think it's one of the main tools we have used to do this.
Well, as I explained, the framework, we use actively the framework of Costa Rica to formulate this VNR. However, we have to consider and go forward to how we explain to different stakeholders that is important, and how the VNR can contribute and push the different positions and the different stakeholder situation. So from the SDG National Secretary, we communicate actively with the different stakeholders, trying to explain the VNR has an opportunity to show the national view and and for the international community, how the different actors are improving and innovated to the SDG 2030 agenda implementation. So we try to show the different actors into the framework, the importance and the relevance to participate, and also not just for for publicity and communicate to international communities, so also to track the process of the different actors, because well, we have to systemize the efforts, the point of view, and the challenges. So we can see it in two ways. In the first way, we see the process to the different stakeholders as opportunity to communicate the national and international community our experience, and also to track the efforts of the different stakeholders to implement the 2030 agenda.
Thank you very much. Maybe we could open for conversation. Maybe someone has a question or a comment, or we can continue. Oh, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, introduce myself. Yeah, I come from civil society from Mexico. My name is Mariana Lucia. So very good to be here. My question for you both is, if the local authorities have like a training for some period of time, are they evaluated about their work?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mariana. Yes, we have a training program through this Spanish Federation in which we are promoting from the ministry and from the regions the framework to do this VNR and the importance to local authorities about doing this type of exercise. So yes, we have a training program, a technical training program for these local authorities. Yeah.
Yeah, in the case of Costa Rica, the local institutions are part of the framework of the SDG national framework. So we have active communication into these institutions, and well, we collaborate with the UN system in Costa Rica and the Ministry of Planning. We have a network of municipalities where we constantly train and well keep pushing to elaborate not only the VNR and also the local review too. And well, the last year we have the first 6 local review in Costa Rica. And well, we have, I know we have to keep pushing and keep motivating the local point of view of the agenda. And well, we have an important training program, and well, we keep evaluating the work in all stages, also in the national and the local stages.
I'm from Nepal. My name is Narendra Dangul. So I'm representing from the CSO NGO Federation, Nepal. So we have a very unique practices this time, especially the children's engagement in the VNR process. Especially we call like a child-led VNR reporting process. That means children themselves prepare the report, VNR report on behalf of CSOs. So they participated and they lead to prepare the report and submit it to the government of Nepal. So in this, we enjoyed a lot when children engage in that VNR process. So now I want to know is there that kinds of any like children's engagement practices in your country about the VNR reporting process?
Yes, in our case, no in the VNR, but when we create our national strategy of sustainable development in 2021, we have a participatory process with child and youth through our youth body in Spain. And this year, after the VNR, we are going to review our national strategy about sustainable development, and we are doing this type of exercise with child and young, because in Spain we have a ministry of young people, so it's a great priority for our government and our country. So yes, I think it's very important, and we are going to do it. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, in the case of Costa Rica, we try to involve the institution in its competitions. I mean, it applies to have some touch and contact to the institution to know what they're doing and what is their commitment with the agenda. But also, well, we do a review of the public policy in terms of the different groups. So in the VNR, I reflect the different policy to attend the children's, the different populations, and well, we try to focus and make a space in the VNR for this kind of groups.
You had your hand up a few minutes ago.
No.
Okay. And so, Stephen Wyman, International Federation of Library Associations, at risk of this being a slightly existential question, but it's one that I know I've faced. What arguments have you found have worked in encouraging stakeholders to engage in the VNR rather than some other process that might lead to policy change within the country?
Yes, in our case, I think the most important thing was that the VNR is related to the review of our national strategy of sustainable development. So I think that for the stakeholders and the civil society, that is one of the main interests on this process, and the report that the Sustainable Development Council has made for this report is key for us for the government and for our ministry to redefine the public policies that we have in our national strategy. So I think that there is a relationship between the VNR process and the public policies and our common framework in Spain for sustainable development. So I think it is one of the main issues, in this process.
Yeah, well, in terms of Costa Rica, well, also we try to show the different stakeholders the VNR formulation has opportunity to make make something different. In this case, we tried also to connect and approve the VNR around the government council, so the different stakeholders can show the politics and the different people to make policies, to make and show how they efforts can implement the 2030 agenda. So we try to make alliance between public and private sector to improve the agenda and have some results from the VNR project.
Thank you. My name is Natalie, and I also work with a civil society organization in Canada. One of the challenges that we often face as a small charitable organization when these kinds of consultations come up is capacity. And I'm wondering if among your best practices, if you have a practice of providing compensation, some kind of financial support for the organizations, especially charitable organizations, who maybe have connections with hard-to-reach populations that governments may not have.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. In Spain, we have a financial program that is not about VNR, but it's about 2030 agenda, and we have several projects that are carried out by several social entities that they are trying to do the exercise of relating the VNR process and the public policy and the projects about 2030 agenda. So yes, we have this type of programs that serve us like a link to these two types of tools. Yes.
Well, in Costa Rica, we don't have financial programs to support the NGOs. However, we try to support the different NGOs through the training. I mean, in terms of indicators, in terms of whatever they can and we can do is very important. So we try to support the VNR process and other process through training, through use the institutionalization of the Costa Rica to have some results for the NGOs, but for us it's very difficult to create some financial or other kind of programs, but we do what we can do.
Thank you very much, Chair. Indeed, I think my question is very much related to what some of the participants here have shared before. I'm Simona. I come from the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated and Working Descent. We are working with communities like the Roma in Europe, the Palenque in Costa Rica, no, sorry, in Colombia, and Brazil with the Quilombolas. So we have those. We are working with those groups that are most of the times left behind, but also they also have a good capacity in terms of civil society participation. So my question is also related to if you have any good practices on how these communities that have been discriminated against, marginalized, have been involved. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. In Spain, we have a Roma people body that is included in our Sustainable Development Council. So when this body has made a report about the VNR, about our national strategy for sustainable development, we have worked with them. So we are trying to include this type of social groups, and it's very important always for our Ministry of Social Rights. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, in Costa Rica, well, we have the active participation from the NGOs platform. So we try to use this platform to get in touch and work with NGOs and social society. So through the framework is what we use to have this contact and this kind of participation of the NGOs.
So I have the two, and then we're going to continue the program. Okay,
thank you very much for this possibility. Thank you for the remarks. My name is Marianne Kreuzig, Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. We are presenting our VNR in 2025, so next year. I'd be very much interested in the practical side. So when you talk about participation and engagement of the major groups and marginalized groups, how does it look like on the practical side? So are they engaged in the product? Are they like the VNR? When you say there's space also for these groups, are they included in the product, in the process, in the presentation, in the HLPF? So if you could just break it down really with the measures that you did in the different stages, I would be really grateful for that.
Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you very much. Yes, in Spain, we have included them on both sides. I mean, on the process side, because we have collected the information and the data with all these stakeholders, and also on the product. Our VNR, it has several points in the structure, and we have the data collected by the local authorities, the data collected by the regions, by the civil society, but also from the civil society side, they have made an independent opinion. So it's an access from the government, that is very important for us when we are going to review our national strategy. It's a key document, a key paper for us. So I think it's both of them, on the product and also on the process. Yes.
Well, the different stakeholders we involve in terms of the methodology of the VNR. We consult the methodology in the different stages of the framework. So the different stakeholders approve the methodology of the VNR, but also we consult for information, for for incomes, for data, and the different efforts to the different stakeholders. And well, maybe for the presentation, not yet, but after the high-level political forum, we're gonna make a presentation for the national authorities or the different stakeholders. So we can see a participation of the different stakeholders through all the process, and especially in the methodology, because it's very important for us. They approve, and well, and how because the methodology is very important, because we know how the different stakeholders can use and can contribute the VNR formulation.
Thank you so much for your very insightful answers. My name is Kathleen from the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative and SUBI-TEST, and based out of Montreal, Canada at McGill University. So my question is more, I'm curious to hear about the engagement of the higher education sector in the development of their VNRs. So there is some leveraging the knowledge base of universities, of experts' opinions in the methodology development of the VNR framework itself, but also reporting on the contribution of higher education to, for example, SDG 4.7. How exactly are universities reporting on that, and how are they contributing to the process from beginning to end? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, in our case, university did a great role in our VNR process, because we collect a lot of data from them to do a statistical framework of the different public policy and how we are nowadays in Spain about the achievement of SDGs, and also because the university participate in our National Sustainable Development Council. So they are included in this body, and they have made this annex. So yes, they have had a great role in our VNR process. Yeah.
Well, in Costa Rica, the academia was part of the National Pact in 2017. So they are active in the different framework stages. It implies, as I told you, the approval of the methodology and the different information and data from the formulation of the VNR. So the academia was very important, but however, they have the same and the same participation of the different actors. But I can tell you, see the VNR is really nice how the higher education institutions contribute, and especially in terms of data. In Costa Rica, the academia has important data, and maybe could be useful for you.
Thank you. Well, let me thank again, staying at Costa Rica, Cristina, Jose Paulo, because also it's been intense in terms of questions, but it's good because there's a lot of interest to learn more about your process. I mean, we're going to move to the next session. It's just two things that stuck with me. I mean, the importance of this institutional approach and having the committee or a council, or where the energy coalesces, or where the government can also work or identify the partners to work. Also, when you connect with the national process, the national framework, and how this also starts to make sense a lot for those on the ground as well. And we have discussed the issue of training, capacity, and interest. And maybe our colleagues, now we are going to be moving to partners, that they can also reflect on those when you are making your interventions and, based on your experiences. So let me invite Nelia Hakimova. She is from the VNR Task Group, our great colleague from the Major Groups and Other Stakeholders Coordination Mechanism. So Nelia, over to you for some reflections as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues, for having us and letting us today organize this event. I think it's a great possibility for us also to share our experiences of engagement and how we try to do our best with the independent civil society, but also other stakeholders are heard during the processes which are happening around VNRs. And just again to remind you, major groups and other stakeholders, it's a really diverse community of 21 different stakeholder groups. We are different thematic groups. We are also regional groups. Yeah, in total now 21, maybe it will be more soon. We, during this process, our responsibility, of course, with collaboration with UNDESA, to make sure that at VNR sessions we have this contribution, 2-minute contribution with comments and questions for each country. This year we have 36. We started with 44, but still over 700 volunteers and participants from all these countries started with us working. We started the process in December, collecting the interest of different stakeholders. Again, of course, we focus on civil society, but we also welcome other major group stakeholders in the process. Through this months, we work together, we facilitate the process, we make sure the process is open, safe for each country, and we have country facilitators who help colleagues to understand the process. We also do capacity building together, also with UNDESA, explaining, because of course new people coming every year in this process, even if it's already there is some tradition. But yeah, just to explain you, we have our procedures, we have also documents which we follow. It's not just some random organization. We also sometimes must be strict. We are really careful about security, because of course we operate in different environment, and make sure that everyone feels safe, open and transparent in this process. We also actively engage at regional forums. It's for us another opportunity to engage colleagues and remind them that they still can step in, they still can contribute to the process and engage. So now we have already, on Friday, we already started delivering these statements. I can say that we are proud to say that we have more than 50% of our speakers women, but of course we represent all stakeholders and all groups. We try to make it diverse, so we have speakers from women's major group, we have speakers from children and youth, we have, here we have, now I know the speaker is here from Mexico, so that's why, we really try our best to engage colleagues. At the same time, we as MGOS also recognize the importance of shadow reports, and I think, like, yes, of course, we have this 2 minutes, but for us it's really important that we have this possibility to provide them broader engagement, so to say, a broader space that colleagues can say more. That's why at our webpage we collect also different shadow reports, sometimes a spotlights reports, so they focus just on, for example, one SDG or one topic, or represent one particular major group. But we also have many, of course, overall reports. Also, I see here a great example from Brazil. Alexander will talk about it. And we also create this platform because so far, of course, we understand there is no official, so to say, recognition for shadow reports during HLPF. So we try to provide this alternative platform, and just in the end I can also provide example how we actually produce the shadow reports. And I personally represent an organization, a project, we call it SDG Lens. It's based in Germany, and with support of German MFA we work with Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and we help colleagues to build capacity, we help them to produce such kind of reports in order that they, again, of course, they come here with this short statement, but they can always refer to the larger report, to bigger list of recommendations, and of course it helps to follow up with these procedures and advocacy, especially in the follow-up process, because of course we know that VNR is important here, but of course we don't want to lose this interest among member states, among other stakeholders also in the coming years between the VNRs. So yeah, I think this would be yeah, my examples from this.
Thank you very much. It's really important to, you know, when you see the interventions, the 2 minute interventions on the ground, we don't see all the work, and there is the year-long work, and I can only imagine that not always very easy because you need to bring all the voices and diversity. So really well done, and I have to say also it is really a pleasure to work with you because you work with us to work with member states, so we are all in the same page and they understand your process as well. So when they come here, they are not prepared for those questions that are coming from the stakeholders as well. Let me now, we're gonna have a regional focus, and let me invite Juliette Braslow. She's a Sustainable Development Officer in UN ESCAP, and I know that ESCAP has been offering several tools to member states as well. So maybe Juliette?
Yes, thank you for the introduction. So I'm from the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, so coming from that regional perspective. And from ESCAP, we really believe that the societies are stronger when people can contribute to the decisions that affect their lives. So in practice, we have a vibrant engagement in our regional forum, so the Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development, starting from even the sub-regional level to involve the stakeholders in the process, bringing their voices and the key highlights and priorities of the discussions, sub-regional level up to the regional level. And this includes a focus on the VNRs as well, for those countries who are presenting in that HLPF cycle, but also for those countries who have presented recently and have lessons to share. So in the idea of capacity building and peer learning, this is something that ESCAP really prioritizes in providing platforms and opportunities and tools for this peer sharing and peer learning. So a bit like a VNR labs, we call them VNR clinics, from the sub-regional level up to the regional level as well. And in addition, an ESCAP flagship program, which is our twinning program for VNR countries, where in the HLPF cycle, we help facilitate a pairing or a matching amongst 2 or more countries. Last year we had 3 countries participate in the exercise, and this year we had 2 sets of twinning. And so this involves the engagement from the start of a virtual level, finding areas where there's an agreement of priorities or contexts that are similar and that the countries want to explore together as they go through the VNR preparation process. And so this includes, beyond sort of specific themed workshops and capacity building seminars online, to a study tour where there are groups of diverse stakeholders that the countries choose who they want to share from the different countries with other sort of parallel organizations in the country they're visiting. So this allows for really on the ground understanding of what countries are doing. So sort of to the question that the representative from Germany asked, how do you do it? Can you give specific examples? They get to ask those questions and see it, and then talk to the organizations and the experts who are leading this, who are doing this work, to understand how it works. And so we find that these exercises are strongest when there is a multi-stakeholder participation. So for example, we've had media representatives participate, parliamentarians, private sector entities, and this even led to some signing of MOUs amongst chambers of commerce, so really finding common ground amongst different countries, and not just at the government level, but across different types of stakeholder organizations. So this is something we continue to facilitate from ESCAP. In addition to just helping countries with some of these questions of how to engage stakeholders and put it from the beginning of the process. And I want to share a few examples of countries who may or may not be in the room, but from VNR presenting countries this year. So for example, from Armenia, that held stakeholder consultations from the beginning, and then also for validating the product itself. as well as Nepal. We already heard about some of the stakeholder engagement, but really taking this multi-stakeholder approach, and Nepal participated in its twinning this year. So making sure private sector and parliamentarians were there, as well as an online platform for stakeholder engagement. Azerbaijan is another country presenting that also developed an online platform. And the idea is that these can continue as platforms and ways to engage, that they can be institutionalized post-VNR. And then from Palau, as we saw in the presentation on Friday, where there was a good, strong youth engagement and even a youth co-presenter in VNR. So these are just some of the examples and the tools that SCAP provides. And we really see that the ability to gain different perspectives from the stakeholder engagement and the exchange of ideas and lessons learned is key, not just for the VNR process, but beyond. So really helping lead to increased know-how in the different types of stakeholder groups and a momentum to help initiate new approaches, really seeing things on the ground from different perspectives, the piece of sort of how can we adapt and learn from these other ways of doing things, where things may be also institutionalized, as we already talked about. So we see the VNR process as a great opportunity to bring stakeholders to the table that are often excluded from the discussions, and really to include those members of groups in vulnerable situations by bringing in as many stakeholders as into these processes, whether it be twinning or VNR clinics at the sub-regional level, or even at the regional level at our Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. So that's some ideas from the Asia Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet. And we can see how member states are embracing the idea of twinning, created this space for dialogue and being frank, and and even the how. Can you share with me how you did this, or the example of the form or something? This is really rich, definitely. I would suggest that we go to the national level and now hear from our two speakers that have engaged directly in their national processes and are bringing those to the global level. So maybe we could go, and then we can have more space for conversation in general. So let me invite Ms. Moran's Siebuwo. She's from the SDG Kenyan Forum.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure listening to the conversations, especially from other regions. It's always builds up capacity, and also going back, you have a new perception or a new way of learning. So it's very good to hear the conversations. And so maybe just to briefly give the Kenyan perspective, Kenya reported in 2017, 2020, and this year in 2024. And so this is our third VNR. One of the things is that 2027, 2020, 2024, civil society have always had their own independent report. And so that has been a good practice, ensuring that the national government itself, what happens is they, through the ministry that is in charge, that's the State Department of Economic Planning, when there's a VNR, they officially write to the different umbrella stakeholders to say to them, feel free to mobilize your sector and come up with an independent report. And one of the best practices, I think, that has been mentioned again from Kenya, as always, is that the government annexes the different reports they receive from the different stakeholders. This for us came after the first VNR in 2017, when we presented our report and then realized all they did was cherry picking. And I know a lot of governments do this because they only take that which they feel is foremost their interest. They also have a lot of conflicting positions, and especially civil society. Many of the issues we focus on, and I know most of you can relate, that coming from the government, that you not pick everything coming from the civil society or sometimes private sector. And so we went further and said to them, if you want us to be involved in this process in a legitimate way, make sure that you can annex our reports. And so that has been happening. If you look at the Kenyan VNR for 2024, you'll find in the annex the civil society report and whatever other sector that brought forward. And so it's up to us to mobilize. So the downside of that, not really the downside, but the challenging aspect of it is civil society in Kenya are not funded by government. And so it's in many other African countries. I see my colleague from Ghana nodding. And so it's up to you as a civil society entity to really come up with your own plans, to really look for resources, mobilize your sector. And I think a lady here talked about capacity, and always the issues of capacity, everywhere. And so you'll find, for example, many times when we're starting our VNRs, we are more than 200 organizations, even 500, because our network is over 500 with very huge networks that are used in the forum itself. But when it comes to the actual submissions, many organizations drop along the way. And it's issues of capacity. Sometimes they say they're understaffed. Some say it's too complicated. There's so many reasons that are given. And for us, for example, this year, we started off in January, and we had writing workshops whereby we bring together our members, provide for them a space, of course, facilitate the whole process. And still, you'll have people come in and participate, but still not give you a report, and not because you don't know the kind of work they do amazing work. In fact, sometimes it's saddening to know that people, organizations out here are doing extremely very good, important work, but sometimes they don't have the capacity or the bandwidth. It's different reasons. But for the few that of course submit, we always support them and are happy to be able to be part and parcel of that particular process. So maybe going back to how it's done in Kenya, they come up with the Interagency Technical Committee. Again, that was a push from civil society to say to them that as the VNR or HLPF is structured, it wants a multi-stakeholder approach. So we need to have a formal multi-stakeholder approach from government level. And so they appointed umbrella bodies, because of course they cannot work with every individual organization, but now sort of just looked through and did a mapping exercise, brought together the different stakeholders. And so the other good positive learning process was they made the private sector alliance in Kenya a co-chair, and also the SDG Kenya Forum a co-chair, to ensure that when there is conversations on SDG implementation, on the voluntary national reviews, that these conversations, these different stakeholders, including civil society, are within that conversation, that the government will not just sit by themselves and decide on some of these processes. Even the reporting, we always have to push them, or we can steer some of these conversations. So what this has done to us is build our capacity as civil society organizations because of the political goodwill. Of course, that gives the civil society an opportunity to feel that if we do a report, it's not just going to end up in one of our shelves, or it's not going to be one of those reports you're running around the United Nations to find audience for, but you have places, the government itself is first and foremost the audience, because they're the direct implementers, and also the different stakeholders can access these reports through some of these, the links and everything. And so that has motivated a lot of civil society organizations. Again, we've been pushing for conversations like the so what after the VNR, because for us, this is a conversation that has not been done very well, and I know many of your countries maybe have the same challenge. We come together, so much effort, so much contributions around the VNR itself, but after that, we sort of just forget the whole process, or we sort of pick up a few recommendations here and there. For us, we've tried to pick some recommendations for advocacy, but we feel that more can be done. And so then how do we build capacity for governments? How do we open spaces for the after VNR processes? How do we go back and look at these well-done reports and the recommendations in there, and how can we implement some of those? How can funders, for example, align to national priorities in terms of the VNR process? Because that's something that we're not seeing, and these are the calls to you and DESA. How do we push further this particular conversation to make sure that implementation is done at national level? It's not done in the regional or the global spaces. So then how do we strengthen that kind of intervention? And then also for us, one key aspect is the leaving no one behind. And so as how many governments are structured, when they talk about communities, they rely a lot on civil society and community-based organizations that work directly with communities. And so one of our big roles is to ensure that we are bringing marginalized groups, including persons with disability, grassroots women, the elderly, and many others who are many times indigenous groups who are many times left out within this particular conversation. One of the things we did this year, apart from the civil society submissions, was to include a chapter on community voices. And this we did through going to specific sub-national level, we call them counties in Kenya, and bringing these communities to speak in their local languages. And so we had a team that could now harness their voices and put that in the VNR and see the civil society VNR as citizen voices. And so this was very, very important. And I think for me, this was a good highlight to ensure that we can have community voices in the VNR. And so these are just some of the opportunities and also the learning processes. And moving forward, we are hoping that we can strengthen the process, but more importantly, we can continue to bring together stakeholders like academia. I think she spoke about academia, media, and many others. Even if we have a multi-stakeholder approach in Kenya, we still are lacking specific contributions from other sectors who have a lot of data like academia, but we keep wondering sometimes how come they're not sometimes, even when the space is open, I don't know what happens. So maybe how do we figure out bringing sectors like academia are very, very key, media and others who can also enrich our reports and also take away the learnings. Let me stop there. There's a lot to share, but maybe I'll come back later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Interesting also, it's like creating capacity on stakeholders, but also creating capacity in governments to learn how to work and how to engage properly the stakeholders. And then I think this is a very good example in Kenya. So let's move to Brazil, which is also my home country, and I invite Alessandra Nigo from the 2030 Working Group in Brazil. Alessandra, I know you have a very long experience preparing reports and engaging in the life process, even continuing tracking the 2030 agenda when there was a gap in the national process.
Thank you, Nariana. Thank you very much for organizing this meeting. First of all, disclaimer, I do not have COVID. I'm having a strong allergy crisis, so I'm trying to cope with that. So we are nice, we are fine. So in Brazil, we started producing the Spotlight report from civil society in 2017. And actually, it was an idea that we had while we were negotiating the 2030 agenda, because we felt that the VNRs could become an instrument from governments to do some propaganda, much more than only to report in advancements of the implementation at the country level. So while we were negotiating the 2030 agenda, I felt at that moment that would be interesting to have something prepared by civil society, but that could rely on official data from the government. So through the civil society working group for the 2030 agenda, which is a coalition made by around 64 organizations at this moment covering the entire SDGs, we started producing this Spotlight report that today covers the entire goal. So we saw the entire goals and we covered the entire targets as well. And it was quite interesting because when there was that moment where we had the ultra-right government in Brazil absolutely opposing the 2030 agenda, for 4 years consecutive, we were the only ones producing data for and about the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And we did that in a very collaborative process because we usually involve the organizations that are members of the civil society working group, and we invite experts from different areas. So we divide the work among us, and the groups of experts, they cover a particular number of targets. So this year, for instance, we had 47 organizations with more than 80 experts producing the reports. And what we did is basically bring together the information and we prepare them now. This is based on official data. So at the end of each chapter, we have recommendations. So it's not only a critical process, but it's action-oriented process. And we do a classification of the targets, showing those who are advancing, those who are not. So it allows us to compare the movement from one year to another. But I think that the interesting process also to share with you very briefly is that because we didn't have more information about what is going on in Brazil in the past year, this year the Brazilian government is doing the second VNR. The first one was in 2017. This is the second one. So the Brazilian government last year represented the VNR showing how destroyed was the country. So everything was very, very bad, and we were, how do I say, going backwards in most of the agenda. So this year, when Brazil started preparing their own VNR, they decided to dialogue with our spotlight report from the last year. So in each chapter, they are beginning with the recommendations that we made for each one of the areas. And we felt that very interesting because it was really, one, the recognition of the work that was done by civil society to keep the 2030 agenda alive, and it has been referred many times, but also there was a genuine effort to dialogue with the recommendations that we put forward. So besides that, Brazil this year also, and now I'm acting as if I was from the government. I'm not, but just to share also positive things, right? So Brazil reinstalled the National Commission of the SDGs that was dismantled by Bolsonaro's government. They are also doing work to align the national banks to the SDGs framework. And last year, when they were planning the budgets, the 4-year budgets for the next years, they also aligned the budgets for the SDGs, showing how each one of the lines of the budgets were connected to each one of the SDGs or targets. So we think that there is indeed a very genuine effort in Brazil going on at this moment to realign to SDG agenda. And my last point is about disaggregation of data. We went further because we don't have in the indicators too much space to talk about some left behind populations. So we went further trying to bring also data around those populations. But also we went further saying that we will never want to have government's money to do this spotlight report because we really want to make it, to keep it very independent from any kind of government influence and so on. So in a nutshell, that's it.
Thank you. So, colleagues, we do have some minutes for a conversation, and I want to open. I will kickstart. I have a question that is for especially our stakeholder colleagues. How do you communicate or engage or encourage your peers to keep engaging in the VNR process? How do you explain to them that this is worth it, right? And that we should pay attention to this process. So maybe Laurence, Alessandra, and then how, because I know you do keep doing capacity building. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Maybe I could start off. One of the experiences we had is, I think from, I don't remember, either our 2017 or 2020 civil society VNR, a few of our members that reported were picked by some of the partners or funders from that particular report. So they started some conversations around that. I think they've seen some of the work they did, and so they started a partnership with them. And so they came back and talked about it to the rest of the colleagues and said, the VNR process can also open up opportunities to your organization. And so that, of course, is always a positive story to tell, because most of the civil society organizations are looking for partners anyway to expand their work or to work with. And so that has been a good way whereby some of the members themselves have given testimonials of how they managed to secure partnerships or expand their work, which is very, very positive. The other thing is also just for them to understand the SDG reporting. So we go beyond just the VNR. We go beyond the SDG targets, the indicators, like at country level, how many indicators are we reporting on? For example, Kenya does about 160, I think, 48 out of the 232 indicators, and so just showcasing this to them and building their capacity to understand that their work contributes to specific indicators. And so this is done throughout the year, and this has helped them to appreciate the process, because we realized sometimes if you come to organizations that talk about the VNR and then they don't really get what that is all about, they could understand that it's just a report that is brought at the high-level political forum, but when they understand why, how it aligns to their work, how it impacts their processes, and how they could utilize the outcome of that report, then it becomes very positive. Also, we've seen people use it for advocacy. I want to give one example. During the 2017 civil society VNR, we indicated something in there. We talked about, we had a census, the national census, and so ours is done after 10 years, which is a very, very long period of time. And we said to the government that we wanted to recommend the use of Washington's set of questions for persons with disability. And so we had just seen other countries do it, and we thought that this would give the persons with disability a good opportunity to get counted. And after that, we did a lot of advocacy around that particular recommendation. And the government of Kenya picked it up in 2019 when they were preparing for the census, and that was implemented. And so we've seen a lot of that. We have some good examples from Kenya that we started off from the VNR, we go back and advocate, and we can showcase some results around whatever came from the VNR. And so the government listens actually to whatever comes from the VNR processes, because it's evidence-based, it has data around it and statistics. And so a lot of policymakers are looking for evidence and data. So we are also trying to tell our people, our civil society organizations, or non-state actors, why it's important for them to be involved in this process.
Well, in the case of our Spotlight report, it was really interesting because after the third year that we published it, we start receiving feedback from universities, from policymakers, from a lot of stakeholders saying, wow, I'm using our report to inform my work. And this Spotlight report became something very important for the Brazilian community in Brazil, particularly those working with public policies or NGOs and so on. So every year there is this eagerness to know when you are going to launch the Spotlight report, because it is helping a lot of organizations and public decision makers to inform their actions, because it's easy. It's very, I think one of the beauty of this SDGs is that because through a report like this, you can take a full picture of the country. So you can see where we are in relation to basically almost policies that we have to cover. So it is important because it is a process to engage people. It is important because it's an opportunity to talk about the 2030 agenda and to make other people interested. But it's also something that can be useful in our day-by-day work. So, for instance, I'm from NGO, right? So when I'm writing something, when I'm writing a project, I just come here to pick up the data, to see what is the data and what are the recommendations. So basically, this is not a tool for us to monitor, but it's also a tool for us to use as an instrument for us to work in our day by day. So this was very interesting for us in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, when we do like capacity building exercises with different stakeholders, of course, we always say this is another instrument for advocacy, because of course civil society, other stakeholders can do advocacy in a different way, but this is another opportunity. And of course, again, depending on the national context, it can be used differently. Sometimes it's really, we have positive examples when actually people who did interventions then have a really nice process inside the country at the national level. Sometimes it's confrontational advocacy, and I think it also has rights to be, because it really depends on the context, the national process. And again, with shadow reports, again, of course, some reports are such great examples that keep the process running inside the country, but sometimes we really, I can tell you again from my personal experience, because I'm originally from Russia, sometimes we just document it. We need to document what is happening. If we cannot do advocacy right now properly, we are not in an open dialogue with the government. At least we want to have this fixed on paper, so to say, the data, the situation which are we facing right now in this period of 15 years. So, as I said, when we say, we always refer, please think how you can use it at your national level, local level. It can be different purposes, and but still, I think it should not be wasted. This opportunity should not be wasted. So this is what we usually say to our stakeholders and motivate them to engage when the country pop up on the UNDESA webpage.
Thank you. So we still have a few more minutes. Just want to see if anyone wants to.
Hi everyone. I'm Laura from a civil society organization in Brazil, ACT Health Promotion, and we are also part of the 2030 working group. And we've been discussing how the VNRs, but also the other parallel reports, the shadow reports, or spotlight reports, which is Brazil's case, they're a diagnosis of what is done within a country, and then we've also been discussing how this needs to actually leave the page and how we can implement this on the ground. So how it can aid advocacy efforts. And then I think I was curious because I think Florence mentioned, and this is my experience as well. So this is how we can implement this in the national level. And then I was curious with Juliet's comment on the Asian Pacific region, on how this can be done at a bilateral or multilateral dimension. And so I was wondering, like, how are these pairings made between different countries, and do you have any success stories on how this is done? So I was curious as to more information on this, and then thinking that this is also a great space for us to pair up and think of possible cooperation. Thank you.
Yes, I can take it. Thank you for the question. So the pairing also depends a lot on the country context and where the interests lie, where the priorities are. Maybe there's similar economies or history, culture, and we don't always match countries sort of from the same region, same background. But for example, this year, we have countries looking at sort of mountain sustainability issues in mountainous regions. So that's something where they can overlap, where they want to also galvanize a bit more work and priority highlighting some of those key issues. So we help to facilitate and have those kind of discussions with countries once we know that they're going to be presenting their VNRs in the next cycle, to say, well, this is where there could be overlap. We're happy to help facilitate. We work through the UN regional coordinator and UN country teams to also bring in all the whole UN family of support where it makes sense in the different countries. So it's different in each context. And of course, there has to be a lot of buy-in because it is a time commitment. I think it's very beneficial, but it's a time commitment from all of the different kinds of stakeholders and groups involved. And then to speak to the sort of having the bilateral conversations, I think that using all the different fora that are available at the different levels. So we try to leverage the sub-regional forums that we have as part of our process leading up to the regional forum, and trying to make as many open spaces as possible to have those bilateral conversations or multilateral conversations where we see there may be overlap, where there are different stakeholders who could be involved. A very strong umbrella group of the Asia Pacific Regional Coordination Mechanism of CSO, so also trying to leverage the partnerships and mechanisms that exist in those different conversations.
Okay, so I'm surprised that we managed the time, and that I'm just taking another look to see if anyone else wants to say anything. So there's one.
So my name is Reese, and I work with Sanitavers. I heard Florence talk about, and from colleagues in Kenya, I've heard a lot about forum in Kenya, and really curious to learn more about how you're able to sustain the conversation beyond the VNR and how you coordinate and also find out how the platforms are financed. I'm asking this because in some of the countries that we support, that has been sort of a challenge as to how you are able to sustain the conversation beyond the VNR and ensuring that the things, the learnings that are taken, and even the advocacy is continuing beyond just coming here and doing the VNR, and more so when the country is not reporting, like maybe it's in Ghana.
Thank you. I think that's a very, very long, I think we can have a bilateral, but I know also maybe Brazil and I don't know where this is from the coalitions. But for us, of course, it's been tough. It's, as you say, it's a process since 2013, before the 2015 mark. But what I would say in summary is, of course, a very dedicated membership. And so for very many years, for us as the Kenyan Forum, it was funded purely by the members based in Kenya. And so they used to come together and they would, just support. We had only one staff at the time, myself, for many years. And so it was just amazing how the commitment, when members said, we can do this. And they said, let's do this. And so they kept just translating some of their resources to shared common outcomes that we want to see. And then with time, of course, because of the consistency, we sort of fundraised and got into specific programs that are within the SDGs. That we have a very strong SDG 5 program that accelerates gender equality because, of course, coming from Kenya and many African countries, issues of gender are a very critical investment. So just looking through some of the SDGs and finding out what it is that we can do. And so we have very strong also issues of data and statistics because that again was a gap within a lot of the organizations. So we sort of found or mapped out what is the value addition within the coalition. And so it's not replicating what members do, but it's more coming up with solutions that are collective and people within the coalition can feel the value addition that is coming from the Secretariat. And so, of course, that has grown the forum to a huge network with more and more members, over 500, and also the Secretariat is now over almost 20 packs that work on a day-to-day basis on different programs, but also a lot of the collaborations are within the members. So for us, we've seen members really committing to the forum and growing it themselves, and they themselves going out and fundraising on behalf of the Secretariat. And so within that now, it has at least given the Secretariat an opportunity to continuously be consistent with the work, but also apart from the VNR, we have other, as I said before, we have very many other critical components within our strategic plan. And so we have the annual general assemblies, the full-fledged elections for members. And so you have to do all that. You have to go the whole mile to ensure that members can have confidence with the Secretariat and they can be part and parcel of that. Yeah, so that's our story, but it's long with so many challenges, but also a lot of success stories. Yeah, and also looking forward to just learning what other people are doing and replicating. So we've learned a lot from Europe, especially. I remember some colleagues just telling us how they organize some of these very long existing forums and us asking them, how have you done it, And so also going out of the way to just learn and replicate that back home.
Thank you so much, Roz. Colleagues, okay, last one.
It's actually related to the previous comment about funding opportunities and aligning with granting agencies, philanthropies, foundations, resourcing for the capacity building. Is there any central mechanism like working between climate funds or working with SDG UN data with regards to ensuring that, you know, the VNR data is being used by all the partners to do this kind of decision making. So for example, say I'm applying to a foundation for a project that I know is going to contribute to my country goals by doing X, Y, and Z because my VNR shows this, but right now there is no like, I don't think there is any cohesion forming between the different funding mechanisms that actually kind of leverages the VNR reports as like a form of demonstrating impact for achieving SDGs. Is there?
I'm not aware.
Like IMF and
No, maybe
World Bank.
no, but if I may, first of all, I think we need to be careful because the VNRs, they need to be double checked, the data there. So that's why we work with official data, but also we do double check because it's not because it's official data that it's necessarily the right data. The second thing is that there is an effort at this moment in a huge conversation about exactly the alignment of the public banks, the IMFs, all organizations around the SDGs and the Paris climate, and also the commitments made by the FFD. So the point is that the SDGs, they should be streamlined about it. I mean, there is nothing like it is that place that we go there to get money for do SDGs, but the opposite. The idea is really it is streamlined around the entire mechanisms for financing for sustainable development, which is a big conversation going on in different arenas at this moment, including when we are moving now for the Summit of the Future.
And the So let me invite, Ella, would you say like just closing remarks or closing remarks?
Yeah, we have another session, VNR session right now.
Yeah.
I also need to go and put people in seats. And but in general, yeah, I think it's really important that member states, first of all, I mean, we know that member states mention stakeholders more and more often in their reports. But at the same time, I'm not sure that mentioning stakeholders and actually engaging them is in equal level, you know, of the process. So of course, for us, it's important that actually this mentioning go into practice, into reality, and that there is also some awareness and capacity building at the national level, because we, as also Florence mentioned, sometimes people don't understand why they need to engage, and so it should not be just a hook, like, yeah, we invited 3 people, we are done with stakeholder engagement, that's it, we can put it in the report. We really need to be transparent, wide range engagement of stakeholders in the processes, and in general, the societies understand like what is this? It's that it's their channel. So it's again too good to be true, but this is the ideal picture, and I think we still should try to target and try to do our best actually to achieve that.
Thank you very much, Lilian. So thank you very much to our speakers on behalf of the VNR countries that joined us today, and Sandra for joining us, for all of you for taking, you know, I know there is a lot of things happening, so it's great that you took the time to be with us. I want to recognize my colleagues and then especially Nineke, who has, you know, was behind the whole planning for this session, and she is also who works with me very directly when we are preparing the VNR synthesis report, the stakeholder engagement chapter. So this has been really, really rich. Thank you so much, and good luck with the, you know, last days of the HLPF. See you around. Thank you.